the naked podcaster, which we'll get into more. Everyone's like, wait, what? That woke everybody up. Grab your coffee this morning because this is going to be an exciting ride. Also a speaker and a mindset coach, among a million other things. The list goes on and on. So tell everybody a little snippet of what they can expect to learn about you during Good Day Carson.
I think probably the mom of 18 I get the most comments about,
right.
Because no, it's not one that's 18. It's it's 18 kids. It's actually 18 kids. And how is that possible? And then a mom of 18 and the naked podcaster, and that seems like a contradiction perhaps to some people. And then, becoming a speaker and a mindset coach in that journey. And I like to run. So there's got to be, there's probably some screws loose here.
I love that. I love that. So you're very passionate. You're also an author. I haven't even mentioned that yet. And you wrote a book that also kind of led into the podcast, and we'll talk about that journey a little bit. But I love this mindset coach. Give us a little snippet of what that means, because it's not life coach. We kind of talked about it before, that mindset. What are we going to learn about that aspect today?
I think I learned through my life, I know I learned through my life, that when you change the lens you view something through, it changes how you feel about it. So I was asked to speak a lot about conflict resolution and stress reduction, and I understand that that's huge for people, especially now with things going on. This was pre-pandemic.
All right, Takeover Wednesday.
But I didn't like the way
Taylor.
it felt to talk about conflict and stress all the time.
Jen? That's a big question.
And I realized in my life,
so how do we break this down?
Since I was pretty young,
I was
I'm just a normal person that made it so that I was looking at a different lens that was a lot more gratitude and joy and happiness. So by looking at that lens, it may not reduce the conflict and stress in your life, but you look at it differently, and that's a huge shout out to you.
Oh, I love that. Well, we're going to hear a lot more about that. We can't wait. We got a big show. There's going to be a lot to talk about. But before we get to all that, here's
another human being. And I knew from growing up that I wanted to help kids in foster care because I went through all the same things that those kids did. And so you kind of combine that.
Right.
And I was just a normal person who wanted to try to make a positive difference in the life of another human being, like I had seen it modeled to me.
Right.
And that's it. I wasn't like 17 or 18 graduating from high school thinking like 18 would be a great number of kids to have someday. It kind of just evolved.
Right.
And I think I'm pretty laid back, so you take one thing at a time.
Right.
And a lot of life is not expected. So that's it. I'm just a normal human being. I'm in the trenches parenting just like everyone else is and going through all the same stuff.
I love that. So let's talk about your book, because that's what kind of started all of this, right? Kind of the beginning of the journey.
It did. It's called Hello, My Name is Warrior Princess, and that's after Wonder Woman. I was that person that talked about writing a book and never did it. And part of the reason that I didn't write my book initially because I was afraid. What if someone hears my story and they think differently of me?
Right.
What if my kids see my story?
Which a lot of people, that's why they don't share their struggles or their story, or even sometimes their successes, right? Because they'll be viewed differently.
Exactly. I didn't want to hurt my mom's feelings. So basically, I lost a job in nonprofit working with foster parents, and I loved it. I thought I was going to retire working in that. And I had the ability to take a few months off, and Dane, my husband, said, well, why don't you write a book? And at that moment, I had to decide, am I going to be the person that talks about writing a book, or am I going to actually do it?
Right.
And I actually did it. I wrote the book in 2 months. I treated it like my job as far as how I structured my time, because I was so grateful that I was given this opportunity to be able to do this. And I was no longer afraid to share my story because my kids had gone through an awful lot in their lives. And because of that situation, I didn't want them to be like I had been. I didn't want them to be afraid to share their story.
Right.
So I wrote the book and put it out there. And yes, that set a lot of things in motion.
Yeah, it said all of it. So let's talk about your blog a little bit, which I love so much, and tell us the story about how it got its name.
My daughter, who's now 24, so, I mean, I hate to admit that she's your age, but she's your age. My daughter, who's now 24, it's 9 years old. So about a decade ago when I was coming up with this idea, what do you name the blog? And she said, Olivia said, name it Mom's Running It, because you run everything from races, from actually physically running, to running a family, to running business, to running everything. So yeah, Mom's Running It. It's almost 9 years old, and it was my goal to just share what it was like to be with, you know, a huge family.
I love that. And where can everyone find that blog?
momof18.com is where everything lives.
Awesome. So we're going to save the Naked Podcaster for in a little bit, because that's a whole thing in its own.
It is, yes.
And also we're going to talk more about what it has been like to be a mom of 18 and kind of a little deeper into that as well. But we'll be right back after a quick break. Welcome back to Good Day, Carson. We are here with Jenn Taylor, who is an author, mom of 18, and also the Naked Podcaster. So, Jenn, let's get into that a little bit. What is the Naked Podcaster?
It's a podcast like any other podcast. It's over 3 years old now. And when I wrote my book, I wanted to help everybody share their story. I finally got past my fear. I shared my story. I'm very proud of that. And then I wanted to help everyone else. I actually do work with a local publishing company called Daily House Publishing, but I couldn't figure out how to help people write books at the time, several years ago. And my husband's best friend said, why don't you start a podcast? He was a podcaster. He gave me my first microphone, and I guess I kind of have this theme in my life where if you make the recommendation that I should do it, I'm like, okay, I'll just do it. And I just started it. I figured it out.
That's not a bad way to live, you know?
I was definitely winging it, for sure. It actually started out with the name Jenn Taylor Rerouting, because of life sends you in different directions. And this is a true story. I was doing a podcast. The way my office is set up, you can walk in and out of the door and not be seen. And so my husband walked in the door, and I didn't have pants on. Like I legitimately, I don't know what was happening, but I didn't. And so afterwards, he's like, you don't wear pants. And I'm like, I could be naked on this podcast. You see me from the armpits up. And he's like, so you're the Naked Podcaster. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm the Naked Podcaster.
Brilliant.
But I had to really think through that process. Right.
The deeper meaning of that.
Right. What does this mean? So the podcast platform has always been to have you on as a guest, and you're sharing your story. Okay. And the goal is you share it raw. If I can find information about you online, that's a great start, but I want you to dig really deep. And the whole goal behind that is that people feel less alone. I dug really deep when I wrote the book. It's really difficult to share your story of struggle. But the whole goal, and in my wording and everything, it said that I expected people to bear it all. You're bearing it all emotionally as a guest. Right. So I'm supporting you by bearing it all physically. So it was a metaphor, and I took it literally. So,
yeah. That's beautiful. And what has your experience been so far with the Naked Podcaster? Because it's been almost 4 years, right?
It's been over 3. Yeah. You know, every time I do a podcast episode and an interview, I'll walk out of my office and I'm like, oh my gosh, that was my favorite interview ever. Because I love the people, and I love the story, and I love their willingness to expose those things that are really difficult in order for other people to feel less alone and to build their skill sets. And that's the whole goal, is that you'll learn, oh my gosh, somebody gets me, and they've been through what I've been through. And my story in book form was one story. I wanted to expose people to lots of stories. So it's one of my favorite things that I've ever done every time, and it's amazing. I honestly, I love it. I love my guests. They become friends virtually, and it's been awesome. It's been amazing.
I love that. I hear you're talking about your third grade teacher, you know, making this impact. I learned growing up that if you are struggling, help someone else. And, you know, that can kind of seem kind of contradicting, but when you help someone else and you kind of see what they're going through and you pour that out, somehow it heals you, you know, and it helps with what you're going through. And so I love this aspect of putting your story out there so it helps someone else, you know. And if we all do that, the world would be, you know, a much better place.
It would be.
To be
I
in.
mean, there's science on just smiling. So you're taking that to a bigger degree. If you smile, you're tricking your brain that you're happy. And if I'm passing you and I'm smiling at you, most of the time it triggers the person to smile back. So it's like this happy hamster wheel that you're creating, and you're saying even more with do something. Do something for someone. We're really conditioned to see the negative in the world. If you go through the coffee line and they get your order wrong, it's really easy to tell them that they messed up your coffee order.
Right.
If the guy on the intercom made you like laugh or made your day, made you happier, we don't often take the time to say, dude, you're crushing it. Keep it up.
Right.
And we just need to put more time into that.
I love that. And that leads into our next thing. So you teach how we talked about this mindset coach, right? A little different from a life coach or some of the other things we're used to, but you talk about compounding joy. So tell us a little bit about that.
This is my favorite.
Perfect.
It's all my favorite. I took the theory of compound interest, which is pretty familiar for most people.
Yeah.
So small, easy, daily actions that add up over time. And we're doing that in a positive way. I took the experience that I had in my life and I really look back. Writing the book was a very cathartic and incredible experience because I had to you dig deep. I had to learn a lot about myself. And one of the things that I learned is that I come through things that are pretty negative situations with a very positive attitude. So how did I do that and why did I do that and what am I doing that's creating that? And I was inadvertently compounding joy in my life on a very regular basis. And I took that and broke it down into a skill set, which is a workshop I offer, kind of like a resume. You know, you work this job and you did these skills. If you take your whole life apart, if you break down your life into every experience that you've had, the good and the bad, and what skill set you've built, you realize that we're incredible human beings who have a lot to offer.
Absolutely.
And one of my skill sets was that I had the ability to compound joy in my life, and I was continuously doing that. I did it with foster kids, and I did it in my family, and I know we're going to talk about some of those tips and tricks. But I really wrote a list of very specifically what was I doing and what was I trying to teach and what was important to me that made it so that I could get through a really tough situation pretty happy. And at first it was, is there something wrong with me? That I can have a really bad situation. Like, you know, I got divorced and it's happy. How can you do that? That doesn't mean it's not hard. That means I'm looking at it through the lens. So how am I creating that lens? And that's how Compounding Joy was born. And I love teaching that because it can completely change someone's life.
I love that. I think all this is good Wednesday wisdom, but the idea that just because it's hard doesn't mean it has to be horrible and bad and negative. You know, something can be hard and you can still find joy. You can find joy in everything, you know, no matter what you're going through. So I love that so much. Well, that's something you're probably familiar with, having as many kids as you do, is remaking of Disney movies and how important these can be. So they have remade live action The Lion King so far. I think they did The Jungle Book. Aladdin was my favorite, but that's my favorite Disney movie. So, but they're remaking Mulan, which I was very excited about. But now, because it can't go to theaters, they're putting it straight to Disney Plus. Which at first I was like, that's so exciting, movie night, I know what I'm doing this weekend. But then I realized that it's on demand, and even if you pay for Disney Plus, you also have to buy it, and it's $29.99. What do we think about this? It's kind of a bummer.
I'm two camps on this. One is, if we went to the theater, if you and I and one other person, three of us go to the theater to see it, we're going to see it one time. And it's going to cost us more than $30.
True.
So
for
in that
tickets.
regard, yes. But on the flip side, I don't want to pay $30
I know.
to watch it one time.
I know. But I read this long article about obviously how it's a bummer because they can't put it in theaters and they're losing so much money. So I understand it, but also, are the remakes ever that good? Like, compared to, I think Aladdin was the only one I was like, okay, this was an end because I had Will Smith, so I'm like, okay, this works.
Beauty and the Beast.
That one was pretty good.
Job with, you know what? We could argue about the movies and if they're good, because we all have different opinions on it, right?
That's true.
I think it's a great idea. I know that they're losing money. If they do well, the $30 is worth it.
Right.
Or we can wait till they just release it.
That's true, until it just goes on Disney Plus, because they're putting a ton of new things on Disney Plus. Like, did you see Beyonce just did her whole thing on Disney Plus? I mean,
there's a lot.
They're reaching out. Yeah, there's a lot on there. So if you watch Mulan, please let us know so then we can buy it if it's worth it.
Basically.
Please tell us.
We
Thank
want
you.
someone else to do it.
Yeah, exactly. So another Disney was taking over social media as they do. So Miley Cyrus is making her comeback again. So I remember when I was younger, she did her Meet Miley Cyrus when she was transitioning out of Hannah Montana, and that was a whole thing, right? But now she's doing it again. She tweeted and she said, Meet Miley Cyrus, round 2, but this time for real. With pictures in what seems like 80s makeup and hair, disco balls. So what should we expect? I mean,
well, I was in high school, junior high school and high school in the 80s, and I'm not sure we should bring it back. So that's the first issue.
So that's the first topic.
Okay, so that's the first thing. At first, when I saw this news clip, I thought, oh my gosh, how many times? And then I realized we all are constantly reinventing ourselves.
Right? That's what I thought about too. How many artists do this? They just don't label it, right?
Actually, most people do it in life. We reinvent ourselves. So I don't think it's a bad thing. Anyone in the public eye has to do it publicly, and they're under tons of scrutiny. So kudos for her for putting it out there, I guess.
Right.
And we'll see, because the last time was a wrecking ball.
Yes, Jen. Yes, with the puns. So I'm thinking of Miley Cyrus and 80s CD. Can you imagine that? Or 80s vibes? I don't know. Maybe I could be for this.
I mean, maybe.
We'll see what happens. But I'm kind of excited to see it. But I don't know. Maybe that's just my like old teenager coming back. I'm like, yes, meet Miley Cyrus again. Let's do this. I love it. Okay, so part of Buzz, we're going to talk about these amazing bracelets, and you're a part of this company. So give us the whole down low. What are these about?
Luke is an amazing human being in Australia. He and I connected a year ago, and he has a company called Viralani. It's Viralani.com. I'm sure people will get all the information on that. And his whole goal was for people to be able to reconnect or reignite what gives them purpose, passion, and drive.
I love that.
So as a mindset coach, I'm doing the same thing. I'm changing the lens you look at with more gratitude. We want you to have, like, who are you? How did you lose your identity having kids? And I think life throws us a lot of curveballs. We go through a whole bunch of stuff we're not certain of. So again, kudos to Miley for reinventing herself, right? Because we're constantly doing this. Something happens and we have to recover and regroup. And we kind of lose sight of the things that you love that gave you that purpose, passion, and drive. Maybe when you were younger, coming out of high school, thinking you were going to conquer the world after college, and you know, I wanted to join Greenpeace back then and save everyone and everything. We have these innate things within us, and it could be family members, or it could be music. It can be anything. So Luke and I partnered a year ago, and I created some of the content for the website, and he asked me to create a quiz. This quiz is phenomenal. It's free for anyone to take. And I asked permission through this process if I could make some small changes to the quiz and use it on my website. So it's on my website also. He's very gracious, which is why I love partnering with him. Our goals are the same. To give people more positivity in their life. We do it in very different ways. And so it's a great partnership. Viralani creates anchoring bracelets. And what an anchor is if I have something, this coffee cup, and I bring it home, and every time I look at that coffee cup, I think about our interview. So it's a physical item that gives me a memory or a feeling. It takes me back in time. The bracelets are meant to be an anchor. And what they do is they have your reasons. Your reasons are those things like music, like family, that give you purpose, passion, and drive. So sometimes you're just remembering what those were. And sometimes you're reigniting them. Sometimes it's like a rekindling of who you are. And sometimes you're learning new things about yourself. And so that's what these are. You wear them, and it gives you those reminders constantly. And I love working with Luke and with Viralani.
Oh, I love that so much. So some exciting things where you are going to give away a few of these bracelets.
And Cassandra, you don't know this until right now, but you're the first one that I'm giving one to.
Ooh,
so
I'm so
I
excited.
am giving away 10. So the first 100 people that respond
Okay.
And we have this information. The first 100 people that respond, we'll cut it off at 100. I'm going to have my 10-year-old daughter do a drawing from a hat. We'll do it on video, and she'll draw out 9 more names, and those people will get a free bracelet. And it's $110 for the bracelet.
They're amazing bracelets. So definitely go and check out the website.
Yep.
And then
so I'm excited. I am excited to give people
so excited too. I love these. So you're going to post it on your social media. It's going to be available on ours. So all they need to do is share.
All they need to do is share and tag me, and we'll get that information together, and we'll do that drawing, and we'll get 9 out. And I can't wait till people get these in their hands and see what a difference it makes.
I love that. I think especially during this time in our world, we need reminders, right?
Yes, and I'm actually the one, when you do the quiz through Viralani or through my website, I am physically the one that's going through those answers and that information.
So
and I'm also giving away a 30-minute Zoom call with that to kind of go through that information.
So amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. So a lot of information. You'll have it on your social media. We'll have it on ours.
Yep.
So if you're interested in this, or maybe think of someone in your life that could use this, that would love something like this.
Positivity, a boost, a reminder.
Perfect. Well, thank you. We'll talk about parenting. Mom of 18. So give us a little insight about how that happened.
I was told at 15, which is very odd and a story in and of itself, that I might not be able to have children. It was great for me. It was a great experience because it planted another seed.
Right.
So in our lives, we have these experiences where someone says something or something happens, and we don't realize it at the time. But between my 3rd grade teacher and then this doctor at 15, I knew I was going to have a family, and I knew it could be different. I did go through infertility, and I did get pregnant 7 times. So that's also another story in and of itself. So in that process, though, I knew I wanted to do foster care because I was like these kids. I never read a file on a child where I hadn't been through everything they've been through at different levels. So I loved that. I ended up having 4 biological children, and then I took in there were 4 adoptions and 2 kids that were kind of extra that stayed long-term. One was a foreign exchange student, and one was long-term in foster care.
Wow.
So that was 10, and then I was divorced, which is also something you don't expect.
Right.
I continued to do foster care, and I took in 4 more kids, 1 more adoption and 3 more. So that's 14 if we're doing math correctly. I think I'm doing math correctly here. I was single. My daughter, who's now 28, and a mutual friend of ours decided to fix me up. That was super fun. I was not very excited at the time about doing it.
Naturally.
And one of the people that they fixed me up with was Dane, and we've been together from the moment we met. It's been years. He has 4 kids, and he was married and divorced, and then married, and his wife had died. So it was a very different situation for me. But because I had done foster care and I had been divorced, you know, I understood what loss meant to these kids. And so that's how 18 happened.
Wow.
It was really fun. We've never had more than 11 or 12 living at home. We've had that a lot. But 12's the most we've ever had living at home. And
she says it like it's a thing. She's like, yeah, 12 was what we had at one time.
People at Thanksgiving are like, I've got to cook for 15. And I'm like, every day. Like,
that's my whole life.
I think, here's the thing. I chose it, and I love it. And that's how I looked at my life. It was really hard. There were moments, there were days, there were situations. I've been through every single thing you can imagine with these kids, from teenage pregnancy to suicide attempts to drugs and alcohol. And holy cow, hey parents, it's really, really hard. It's really, really hard. And there's no manual, nor do I think there should be. I'm writing my 2nd book now, and it's the non-parenting book. It's basically experiences. It's like my podcast. You have this story, you have the tips and tricks, and then people can use that in the way that they feel the best. So parenting's just really hard, and the whole goal is to get through it with grace, giving yourself grace.
Absolutely.
Not losing your identity, and making sure you take care of yourself so you're the best version. The oxygen mask on yourself first sort of thing.
I love that. There was a snippet on your website where it was shouting out to moms, right? Like, hey, remember yourself, you know? Remember that you have to come first, otherwise you won't be able to, you know, I mean, care for anyone else, including your kids.
And that's a huge part of the coaching and speaking. I have 13 items that I tell you that are small, easy daily actions. We don't have time, and people are overwhelmed and stressed. There's a lot of anxiety. The pandemic didn't make that better. And so how do you go through situations that are really tough and still manage everything and feel like you're not losing your mind and your identity, and that your whole world is not falling apart? And those are the tips and tricks and actions that I show people how to do, and I know we're going to be talking about those. And that's, I think, the biggest myth when it comes to parenting is that it's going to be easy. Oh my gosh, you're going to have this baby. Everyone's going to think it's cute. You're going to get presents. It's going to be so fun. That is true, but there's a flip side to that. It's also the hardest thing that you will ever do. And you need support in that. And
Absolutely.
I've just taken over 28 years of experience parenting, 12 years foster care, 3 years working to train foster parents.
Wow.
And then I became a trainer of trainers. So that's a lot of teaching about conflict resolution and stress reduction and suicide awareness and super not happy things, but things so that you can make your world, you can be aware of your world and then add the positivity and that lens instead of focusing on the conflict and the stress.
I love that. I love that. Give us a little snippet of those 13 things that you were talking about.
One of them is smiling. Smile. Smile at each other. It's contagious. That's one. One is exercise. It's training your body that what you do matters.
Oh, absolutely.
So I love the thing that you do and the thing that I've done in my life where I didn't know that there was science behind it, and then learning the science behind it. And then I have a snippet of something that takes less than 2 minutes. And you can do it on your own, and then how to do it with your family, with your kids. And it's my favorite thing that I've ever done with my kids. And it's a thing that probably kept me going through a lot of tough stuff without realizing it back when I didn't know the science behind the action. So that's a snippet.
I love that. And you do seminars per se about this mindset coaching. So how can people get a hold of you to learn more and if they're interested in doing that?
Momof18.com has everything. So momof18.com is where you go. It has my email, it has my Google phone, it has every social media. So basically, Cassandra, whatever way you prefer to contact me, it's there, and you do it the way that you want to.
Awesome.
And I love that, because creating a tribe and connecting and having people to help, it does take a community. And building that community of other people. And you don't have to be a mom. You can be a dad. You can be a woman or a man who is just stressed, who doesn't have kids. So it's not eliminating that. It's just that
everyone and anyone.
I'm a mom who has kids, who's been stressed and figured it out, and I want to pay that forward.
I love that. I love that. Well, Jen, we need like 4 hours to continue, because we could keep chatting about so much, but we only have an hour. So, so what do you want the audience to leave with today?
I'm really excited about this, because if you have 2 minutes in your day, we all do, that you can allocate time for yourself. This is my number one thing that I want people to do. I want you to take a notebook and I want you to write it down. I use Notepad for a lot. This is not one of those times. Get a little flip pad, something, piece of paper. Write down 3 new things that you're grateful for today. Start small, because some of us are overwhelmed. It can be making your bed. It can be that you're here today. But 3 things that you're grateful for. If you have kids, this is super exciting. It's something that I've done for over 25 years. We call it high-low. So you sit down at dinner, and at the dinner table we go around, and you get to share 1 low with me. One thing that wasn't that great about your day. Because we want kids to be able to talk about things that they're struggling with.
Absolutely.
And then 3 highs. And those highs are those 3 things that you're grateful for today. What happened today? What happened today that was good? And we go around the table. You will notice very, very quickly, especially with your kids at the dinner table, that they don't have a low. Or there was just nothing that happened in that day that was bad enough that's worth warranting talking about, and they can't stop at 3 highs. They have so many. This trains your brain to look for the good in the world. So you start to realize over time, over a short period of time, that there are so many good things happening to you in the day. This will give you more time, because you're not focused on negativity. So I'll give you that 2 minutes back. I promise within a couple weeks, you will have more time in your day, and you will be spending it looking for and recognizing the things that you're grateful for, and you won't stop at 3. So if I could give you one takeaway to start with right now, it would be that.
Oh, I love that. Well, Jenn Taylor, we loved having you on this morning. You're amazing.
Thank
You're
you so much.
amazing. So make sure you go to momof18.com, learn more about the Naked Podcaster, if you want to take a seminar. I mean, there's so much to learn on there, and also get a bracelet.
Yes,
so
please.
Yes,
yes, connect with us.
Yes.
That would be wonderful.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. It's been an amazing Takeover Wednesday. We were graced to have you on the show this morning. Well, as always, I'm Cassandra Butterfield. Let's spread positivity and have a good day, Carson.